Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and really try to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Today, we're diving into something many of us, well, probably take for granted. The safety of our medications after they've already been approved. You might think, once a new drug clears years of research, clinical trials, the work's done, right? Headlines celebrate new treatments, and it really feels like a definitive win for science, a finish line.
Right. And that's actually a profound misconception, as our sources for this deep dive strongly emphasize. Regulatory approval isn't the finish line at all. It's really just the starting gun for a new, and you could argue even more vital phase of evaluation.
A starting gun. Interesting way to put it.
Yeah, because this is when a drug begins its life out in the real world.
Okay.
It's suddenly being used by millions of, incredibly diverse individuals, not just the carefully selected few you see in a trial setting.
Exactly. And this ongoing, absolutely essential process of keeping an eye on a drug's safety, its effectiveness, once it's actually on the market, that's known as post-market surveillance,
Right.
or more broadly, pharmacovigilance.
That's the term, yeah.
Our sources have some great ways of describing it. One called it the silent, vigilant, and continuous safeguard that functions as our global immune system against unforeseen drug-related harm.
That's a powerful analogy.
And another just called it the unsung hero of medication safety.
I like that too. And it's really astonishing just how critical this continuous vigilance is. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore why post-market surveillance is so indispensable. We'll sort of peel back the layers on the intricate data networks used to monitor medications.
How it all works.
Exactly, the how. And trace the path from maybe just a tiny safety signal all the way to decisive action that protects public health, often on a global scale. It's all about making sure your medications are as safe as they can possibly be and, and understanding the robust systems behind that promise.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea then, that approval isn't the end. Why is this constant surveillance so utterly essential? I mean, especially when a drug has already gone through years of really rigorous testing.
Yeah.
What are the biggest blind spots that even the most thorough clinical trials just can't quite address?
Well, the primary reason, it really comes down to the inherent limitations of those pre-market clinical trials. While randomized controlled trials, RCTs, are absolutely the gold standard for looking at initial efficacy and safety, they simply can't tell us everything.
Okay.
Think about it like this. A large clinical trial might involve maybe a few thousand patients, which sounds like a lot, right?
Yeah, seems pretty comprehensive.
And it is fantastic for detecting calming side effects. But what if a really serious adverse event only occurs in, say, 1 out of 50,000 patients? In a trial of 5,000 people, you're statistically pretty unlikely to see even one case.
Oh, okay. The math just doesn't work out.
Exactly. It's only when millions of people start using the drug in the real world that these rare but potentially devastating side effects, they become visible.
And it's not just the sheer number of people, right? It's also who those people are.
Precisely. Clinical trials, by their very design, often involve very controlled, fairly uniform groups of people. Participants are typically healthier overall, maybe with fewer existing illnesses. They fit specific criteria.
Right. Easier to manage the variables.
But in the real world, drugs go to a much, much broader population. The elderly whose bodies process drugs differently, pregnant women, children, and crucially, patients with multiple chronic conditions who are already taking many other medications simultaneously. That whole issue of polypharmacy.
That's a huge factor, I imagine.
It is. An adverse event might only really pop up in these complex patient groups, people who are actually often excluded from the original trials.
Okay, so you've got rare events and you've got different kinds of patients. What else?
This also brings up the issues of duration and real-world context. Most trials only last maybe a few months, sometimes a few years. That's often not nearly long enough to catch adverse effects that might take many years of continuous use to actually develop.
Long-term effects, yeah.
What's more, clinical trials are, let's face it, idealized environments. Patients are watched very closely. They're usually very good about taking their medication exactly as prescribed.
Right. Compliance is high.
But the real world is, it's far messier. People might not take medication consistently, or they might mix it with other over-the-counter drugs or supplements, things the trial didn't account for. Doctors might even use a drug for an off-label purpose, outside its specific approved indications. Post-market surveillance helps us understand how a drug truly performs amidst all the complexities of real-life behavior, including those unexpected interactions.
And history, unfortunately, is full of pretty stark examples that underscore why this ongoing vigilance is so critical. Our sources highlight the story of Vioxx, for instance. that anti-inflammatory drug approved back in the late 1990s.
I remember that one.
Yeah. Its initial trials didn't really flag major cardiovascular risks, but it was robust post-market studies analyzing that real-world data that eventually unveiled a clear increased risk of heart attack and stroke.
A significant risk.
Huge. The drug was eventually withdrawn in 2004, but not before millions had already used it. That case really kind of kicked off a significant push to strengthen our post-market surveillance systems.
Absolutely. And if we look even further back, the truly tragic story of thalidomide in the 1950s and 60s, the drug that caused those severe birth defects, that was a horrifying wake-up call that fundamentally reshaped how we regulate drugs today.
A defining moment.
Completely. While that was primarily a failure of the pre-market testing, it was the courageous observations of clinicians, doctors seeing patients in the real world that truly uncovered the link. The thalidomide tragedy really forced the creation of the stringent drug regulatory systems we rely on now. It's just a stark reminder that vigilance simply can't ever stop.
Okay, so we've clearly established why this silent safeguard is so crucial. It's a true defense against the unexpected things that trials can miss. Now let's maybe pull back the curtain a bit and see how these drug detectives actually gather their clues. How do they build that protective shield from the ground up? Our sources describe it as casting a wide and interconnected data net.
Indeed, that's a good way to put it. The oldest and perhaps most widely recognized method is through what are called spontaneous reporting systems, or SRS.
Spontaneous reporting.
Yeah. Think of them as vast kind of global neighborhood watch programs for drug safety. These are immense databases where pretty much anyone, healthcare professionals like doctors, pharmacists, nurses, but also patients themselves and even the pharmaceutical manufacturers, can voluntarily submit reports of suspected adverse drug reactions.
Okay, so anyone can report something they suspect might be linked to a drug.
That's the idea. Prominent examples include the FDA's Adverse Event Reporting System, ETALANDIS, here in the United States, and the World Health Organization runs Vigibase, which pools data from national pharmacovigilance centers all around the world.
So it's global.
It aims to be. And the big strength here is their massive reach. They can potentially collect data on all drugs, from all types of patients in almost any setting. That makes them excellent early warning systems, particularly for those rare, unexpected adverse events we talked about.
But I sense a but coming.
Well, yes, they do have significant limitations. Underreporting is a massive issue. It's estimated that only a maybe small fraction of all adverse drug reactions are ever actually reported.
Why is that? People just don't think to report or don't know how.
It's probably a mix of things. Lack of awareness, uncertainty about whether the drug really caused the problem, sometimes just lack of time for busy clinicians. Plus, the quality of the reports that do come in can vary widely. Sometimes they're missing key information. Dose, timing, other medications the patient was taking, things you need to really assess the situation. And crucially, with spontaneous reports, you don't usually know the denominator, the total number of people exposed to the drug who didn't have a problem.
Ah, right. So you can't calculate a true risk rate.
Exactly. It's like trying to figure out a baseball player's batting average, but only knowing the number of hits, not the total number of times they were at bat. You can't get the real risk or a true incidence rate from this data alone.
So with all that noise and missing information, how do you actually find signals? How do regulators figure out what's important?
It's complex. Our sources explain that regulators and researchers are basically looking for patterns, for something that stands out statistically. It's called signal detection. Imagine if, say, only 1% of all prescriptions nationally are for a specific drug X, but then when you look at all the reports submitted for a rare type of liver injury, suddenly 20% of those reports mention drug X.
Okay, that difference definitely jumps out.
That huge difference is what's called a disproportional signal. It's like a statistical red flag screaming for immediate investigation. Doesn't prove causation, but it says, look here.
Got it. So spontaneous reports are like the smoke detectors, maybe prone to false alarms, but crucial for that first warning.
That's a great analogy. And while they're invaluable for those early alarms, sometimes you need a more proactive approach, which is where active surveillance using real-world data, or RWD, from electronic health records, EHRs, and large administrative claims databases truly shines.
Okay, active surveillance. How is that different?
Unlike the passive nature of waiting for reports to come in, these data sources allow researchers to actively study large, defined populations of patients. We can actually see who is prescribed a drug, look at their baseline characteristics, other health conditions they have, and then track what happened to them over time, like subsequent diagnoses, hospitalizations, other outcomes recorded in their health records or insurance claims.
Right, so you're following groups of people systematically.
Exactly. And this next part, as our sources really highlight, is the game changer. With these systems, you often get both the numerator, the number of people who experienced an adverse event, and the denominator, the total number of people who took the drug in that system.
Ah, okay, so you can calculate real rates.
Yes, that's the key advantage. This allows us to calculate actual incidence rates, like the risk of this adverse event is 5 per 100,000 users per year. Much more precise. These massive databases are invaluable for what are called pharmacoepidemiologic studies. Epidemiologic.
Yeah, basically epidemiology focused on drugs. These studies help test hypotheses that might have emerged from spontaneous reports. They let you compare the safety profiles between different drugs used for the same condition and truly understand how drugs are being used and performing in large populations. The FDA's Sentinel system is a really leading example of this kind of active monitoring network.
Sentinel. Okay. Are there other methods besides spontaneous reports in these big databases? Yes, for some drugs, particularly maybe new ones that come with known potential risks, or those used in very specific patient groups. Regulators might also require patient registries and specific cohort studies. These are more focused, organized systems designed to collect uniform, detailed, high-quality data on a specific group of patients, often over a long period.
So more targeted data collection?
Exactly. For example, a registry might follow all patients starting a new biologic therapy for, say, an autoimmune disease. It would systematically collect information on both their long-term effectiveness and safety in a very structured way, often getting more clinical detail than you'd find in claims data.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about digital data earlier.
Ah, yes, the emerging frontier. Digital data. Researchers are definitely exploring using things like AI, artificial intelligence, and natural language processing, NLP, to sift through huge amounts of unstructured data. Think patient forums, social media posts, maybe even data from health apps looking for early safety signals.
How would that even work?
Well, imagine an NLP algorithm detecting a sudden spike in online discussions about a specific, unusual symptom among people mentioning they use a particular new medication. That could potentially be an early whisper of a problem, maybe even before formal reports start coming in.
That sounds powerful, but also potentially messy.
Extremely. While it offers this tantalizing potential for even earlier signal detection, it comes with immense challenges. You've got issues of data reliability is what people post accurate. There's the sheer noise in online discussions, separating signal from chatter, and of course, significant ethical and privacy considerations.
Right, you can't just scrape everyone's health comments online.
Precisely. It's a very promising area, but one that requires extensive validation and a very, very cautious approach before it becomes mainstream for regulatory action.
Okay, so we have these different nets, spontaneous reports, big databases, registries, maybe digital whispers, catching potential signals. But detecting a potential safety signal, as you said, is just the first step. The journey from that initial flicker of concern to real protective action, that sounds like it must be quite a rigorous evidence-based process itself.
Oh, absolutely. The thoroughness involved, as our sources detail, is really quite impressive. It has to be. Once a potential signal is flagged, let's take our earlier example, a disproportionate number of reports linking a new drug to a specific heart rhythm problem, a multifaceted investigation kicks off.
Okay, what does that involve?
It usually means a really deep dive into the existing reports, looking at the quality, the details, cross-referencing that signal in other databases, maybe internationally, and assessing the biological plausibility. Is there a known mechanism, based on how the drug works, that could potentially cause this specific problem? Does it make biological sense?
So checking if it's even possible scientifically.
Right. Then comes a really critical step, causality assessment. This is tough. Just because a patient took a drug and then had an adverse event doesn't automatically mean the drug caused it. It could be due to their underlying disease, maybe other medications they're taking, or sometimes just pure coincidence.
Separating correlation from causation, the classic challenge.
Exactly. That's why those formal pharmacoepidemiologic studies often using the large EHR or claims databases we discussed, are frequently conducted at this stage. They try to rigorously compare the risk of the event in people taking the drug versus a carefully matched group of people not taking the drug, helping to isolate the drug's true impact, controlling for other factors as much as possible.
Okay, so you gather more evidence, maybe do specific studies. What happens if the evidence starts pointing towards a real risk?
Well, if the evidence strongly suggests a new risk is likely real, regulators and the manufacturers then have to conduct a formal reassessment of the drug's overall risk-benefit balance. This is a fundamental question. Is the benefit the drug provides to patients still considered greater than its now understood risks?
And that balance could shift based on the new information.
Definitely. That calculation can really change based on how severe the disease is that the drug treats, whether there are good alternative treatments available, and of course, how serious the newly identified risk actually is.
So what actions can regulators actually take based on this reassessment? What does it mean for patients and doctors?
They have a whole range of actions they can deploy to protect public health. The most common action is often updating the drug label, the prescribing information or package insert, adding details about the new adverse reaction, maybe warnings or precautions for doctors to watch out for.
So informing prescribers.
Yes. For more urgent or serious concerns, they might issue specific communications like Dear Healthcare Provider letters to directly and quickly inform doctors and pharmacists.
Okay. What if just updating the label isn't enough?
Good question. They might require the manufacturer to implement something called a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, or REMS. This is a formal, often quite specific plan designed to manage a known or potential serious risk associated with a drug.
What would a REMS involve?
Oh, it could include various things. Maybe requiring special training or certification for doctors before they can prescribe it, mandating specific patient monitoring, like regular blood tests, or requiring the distribution of specific educational materials to patients about the risks. Sometimes it involves restricting dispensing to certain pharmacies.
So extra hoops to jump through to ensure safer use.
That's the goal. In some cases, they might also recommend restricting the drug's use only to certain patient populations deemed most likely to benefit or least likely to be harmed, or perhaps changing the recommended dosage.
And what's the ultimate step?
Well, finally, in relatively rare situations where the new risk is determined to overwhelmingly outweigh any potential benefit for any patient population, regulators have the authority to take the ultimate step of asking for or mandating the withdrawal of the drug from the market entirely. Like what happened with Vioxx.
Wow. So a whole spectrum of responses, from label changes to market withdrawal.
Exactly. And our sources really emphasize that this entire process is dynamic and collaborative. It involves constant communication between regulatory agencies globally, the pharmaceutical companies, healthcare professionals, and increasingly, which is important, input from patients and patient advocacy groups. Everyone working together, ideally, to safeguard public health.
It sounds like a really sophisticated system, but I imagine it's not perfect. What are some of the big challenges that still exist?
Oh, definitely not perfect. Significant challenges remain. As we mentioned, underreporting to those spontaneous reporting systems is still a major hurdle. We really need to keep making it easier for both clinicians and patients to report suspected adverse events and just continue to raise awareness of how profoundly important this is.
Making it less burdensome, perhaps.
Yes, and perhaps leveraging technology better there. Also, data quality in those real-world sources like EHRs can be variable. Records might be incomplete, coding might be inconsistent. It requires really sophisticated methods to clean and analyze that data appropriately before you can confidently draw conclusions.
Garbage in, garbage out, basically.
To some extent, yes.
Yes.
And as we discussed, teasing out causality, figuring out if the drug truly caused the event, remains one of the most difficult scientific aspects of this whole field. Disentangling the effect of a single drug from that complex web of a patient's underlying health, other drugs, lifestyle, it's a constant challenge.
Yeah, I can see that.
Plus, a more technical issue, but still important, interoperability. Essentially, how well different health data systems from different hospitals, clinics, pharmacies can talk to each other and share data seamlessly. That continues to hinder our ability sometimes to get a complete and timely picture of a patient's experience across different care settings.
Silo data is a problem everywhere, it seems.
It really is in healthcare.
So, looking ahead then, what's on the horizon? Where's post-market surveillance heading in the future?
Well, there are several pretty exciting directions. The rise of AI and advanced analytics, as we touched on, certainly offers the potential for faster, more robust, maybe more sensitive signal detection from these massive data sets?
Finding needles in bigger haystacks faster.
Potentially, yes. But again, this also brings new challenges in validating these complex black box algorithms and ensuring they are fair, transparent, and free from bias. That's critical.
Making sure the AI is trustworthy.
Absolutely. We'll likely also see increased global data sharing initiatives. Pooling information across countries allows for detecting signals, especially rare ones, even faster than any single country could alone. And I think the use of real-world evidence, RWE evidence derived from this kind of real-world data, will continue to expand its role in regulatory decision-making. Not just for safety, but maybe even for effectiveness in certain situations, integrating monitoring into a more seamless life cycle of evidence generation for a drug.
Fascinating. So it's a constantly evolving field. We've certainly journeyed through the vital, often unseen world of post-market surveillance today. It's really clear from our deep dive that this isn't just a static checkmark after approval. It's a continuous, dynamic, really data-driven process that serves as an absolutely essential safety net, making sure the medications we all rely on are not only effective but also as safe as possible throughout their entire life cycle. As our sources emphasize, approval really isn't the end of the story. It is simply chapter 1.
Well said. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really points towards a shared responsibility. The entire system of drug safety is critically dependent on the vigilance of healthcare providers, yes, but also, crucially, on the willingness of patients like you listening to report potential problems.
That's right. Our sources make such a crucial point here. You, as a patient or maybe as a caregiver for a loved one, you are truly on the front line. If you or someone you care for experiences a new or unexpected symptom after starting a medication, don't just dismiss it. Don't assume it's unrelated.
Yeah, it's easy to do that.
It is. Talk to your doctor or your pharmacist about it. They can help figure out if it might be related to the drug. And importantly, they can submit a report if necessary.
And this raises an important point, too, because in many countries, patients can also report directly to the regulatory agencies themselves. For example, through the FDA's MedWatch program here in the United States, there are often online forms or phone numbers.
So you don't always have to go through your doctor.
Not always, though discussing it with your doctor is usually the best first step. But your single report, even if it seems minor to you, when it's combined with potentially hundreds or thousands of others from people you'll never meet, that could be the key piece of the puzzle, the key to identifying a new safety signal that protects countless future patients.
Wow. So that really brings it home. It's not just something happening in labs or regulatory agencies. It involves all of us.
It absolutely does. So maybe a final thought for you listening. What stands out to you from this deep dive about your potential role in medication safety? And how might your own vigilance, just paying attention and speaking up, contribute to this essential system that ultimately keeps us all safer?